they were rolling out all kinds of new policies, and the new sergeant major of the army, so like the highest level enlisted person, was saying, I used to think that way, and he was a white man, and he was saying, I used to say, I don't see any color but green. Until I started actually talking to the soldiers and asking them and listening to them. And a black soldier said to me, Sir, if you're saying you don't see color, you're saying you don't see me. Okay, so there I was, minding my own business, looking at my TikTok comments, and on some video where I was talking about how the military weaponizes hair regulations and specifically weaponizes them against Black women. Um, I got the comment from somebody very sure of themselves, wanting me to know that Black and white are made up, and therefore that using those words is only playing into white supremacy and the structures that are already there. And I'm just gonna leave it right there for you.
Wow, that's quite a few things right there. I mean, the silencing, the thought terminating cliche to silence what I've decided to call cognitive conflict instead of cognitive dissonance, because I don't think people align with dissonance. We don't use that word. But anyway, because what? Okay, so things can be made up and have real consequences. You can yell fire in a crowded room and there be no fire and all of the broken bones are still broken. People panicked just as if there was one. You yell, I used to say, you yell race in a room, arm one side, and say, those people are about to come get you right now, and they are, monsters, or blah, 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 blah. Whether or not that was true, they still acted on that stuff. So let's talk about that instead of just shutting down an entire conversation. If we don't talk about it, that makes it not, that's all right to comfort. And as far as my work has led me to believe, right? Right to comfort of whom, right? When we talk about keep the peace, for whom? Because I'm uncomfortable. That's why I said the thing. And then you want to come in and say, well, don't talk about it. It's already been said also. So it's a very hamster wheel thing.
Yeah, and
No
I mean,
growth.
so my response, of course, was like, so I said that obviously, like, yes, race is a construct, but it is a construct that has very real consequences in our life, right? I have had many privileges from having a white face. You have had the opposite. Um, but, and then I took it to, but like, also, we're all still in the cult, right?
Right.
Like, of white supremacy. It is a system over America. It is still functioning.
Yeah.
And so you can't stop using the language of the cult while you're still in the cult trying to dismantle the cult. Right? You still have to use those words. It'll be
Right.
great to get to a point at which I'm not white, I'm a Slovakian American, or, wherever we go when we get to these
I mean, it's
post-race
what it
conversations.
wouldn't matter. If it didn't make any difference, it wouldn't make any difference. I don't think being recognized as being something is that big of a deal. It's the value system associated with it and the dehumanization that you have put on being anything but what you would do, what your comfort level is. You wouldn't talk about this thing, and your livelihood is dependent on the fact that your version is the version and you're uncomfortable. So we should all be uncomfortable. And that's how you get to abstinence only. And you know why we have a lot of trouble with consent? I'm going to have a whole section on comfort and consent because you're more comfortable with coercive control than you are with an uncomfortable conversation. How are you, why are you more comfortable blaming and letting it keep happening because you don't want to have the talk? But then you say consent. Okay, consent to what? Don't worry about it. We're not talking about it. Okay. Don't have sex. Don't what? What is that? Don't worry about it. You're not doing it. What do you can't, that's not, we know that's not how learning goes, right? But
And
when a man is uncomfortable, the man in charge, or they want to keep you not aware of what you need to be aware of to make informed decisions,
yeah. Yeah.
it's not in your best interest to not talk about it.
Said comfort and consent, you just kind of broke my brain. You know, I, coming
Yeah.
from my background, I mean, I've talked about this where like I've definitely been in situations where like you just have sex because you don't know how to say no. And sometimes it's like because you don't feel safe to say no. Because sometimes it was just like, I don't know how to have this uncomfortable conversation,
I
you
don't
know?
know what's going to happen. I don't know. And because I'm so fearful and we're, so, we're in this narcissism, I call it, and we've been like gaslit so much, we're on edge, we're on eggshells, and we think, well, I kind of do know what's going to happen this way. And we tend to go familiar, safer. It's not, in my opinion, but we don't know that. We're not willing to risk any extra distress, really, because we're just so, well, we don't know and we're trying to be good, especially if you're that in that stage of life, right? Where you're with a man and you're concerned that he's going to kind of, what do I do? I totally get it. And it's like dealing with this right to comfort thing, I thought was going to be a breeze doing this tenet. It has taken me so long. Also, it was like, and it's just making me realize so much that I'm just like, and we've just conflated, a lot. Uncomfortable with bad and danger, and uncomfortable is not unsafe, and danger, discomfort, all that stuff.
One
But at
in
the same time, it's
one in
like,
four children in America are sexually assaulted in their own homes. Like
yeah,
danger can happen in these places where you're told you're comfortable, you
there's a
know?
preschool
And
game called Don't Wake Daddy. Who's like literally it's a game you can buy right now. And the whole thing is don't wake daddy. I don't know. I just once you think about certain things, and we talked about give your mouse a cookie, and my brain is just like, well, yeah. Well, I can't. Not that I was about to read that book anytime soon, but
I know.
yeah.
Oh. Um, okay, so you know what's interesting is like the military has had this whole black and white discussion, right? And so for a really long time, right, these dudes, mostly white dudes, of course, because they're the ones that are still by far and large the leaders, right? But like people in leadership would say this, I don't see color, I don't see black and white, I only see green for army, right?
Oh,
Or like, especially in
okay.
the
Yeah. Sorry.
Marines, they would be like, "All Marines are green," you know. Um, yes,
Okay.
I see the face. And so fast forward to 2021, when they were doing all kinds of
Yeah,
new
eyes
policies.
don't work. Sorry.
They were rolling out, yeah, they were rolling out all kinds of new policies, and the new sergeant major of the army, so like the highest level enlisted person, was saying, you know, I used to think that way. And he was a white man. And he was saying, I used to say, I don't see any color but green. Until I started actually talking to the soldiers and asking them and listening to them. And a black soldier said to me, Sir, if you're saying you don't see color, you're saying you don't see me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so obviously, institutionally, still probably having the problematic conversation, but it was cool to like hear that from a senior person in the military and be like, that's the answer, right? Like, black people are not asking you not to see color,
It's
not
also
to say black and white. It
it's
is,
literally never been that. Like no one, and that's the whole thing about equality. It's like I don't think people are listening sometimes. Which of course, that's like basically the whole thing I say. But the we're not even the privilege part. It's like privilege is having an easier time at playing Monopoly. And I put out a little poll and I was like, I don't think anybody enjoys playing Monopoly. Anybody who is good in community isn't having a good time playing Monopoly. And it was created, in fact, it was called the Landlord's Game in order to show how exploitative and horrible capitalism could be in terms of home ownership and people ownership and things. And now it's become like America, Monopoly, McDonald's, put it together. They did a scam. Like I'm just, is it better? You understand the strategy and the rules to Monopoly better, and you tend to win a lot. That's how I view privilege now. At the time, it would have been like, I was trying to figure out the rules of Monopoly, and I spent all business school to be like, okay, I enjoy this, guys, I think, right? Because we adults we like this stuff. And then I realized, like, wait, no, I'm gaslighting myself. And no wonder I feel miserable. I'm trying to tell myself I like this.
Now, I love the Monopoly analogy. I have written an essay called Minesweeper Tricks, White Privilege, oh my. White Privilege, oh my. Because so I'm just going to tell you the thing. Okay, so there's a trick to playing Minesweeper. Do you know this?
No.
Okay, so there's a trick. That's really all you need to know. You're
Okay.
not actually supposed to like count it all out in your head. If you double click if you like right click on each square, it'll show you which ones can be bombs. And if you know how to do the trick right, I've beaten expert level in 99 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So what's interesting about this is that so most people, right? I find like most of you millennials did not know this. It's probably only us homeschool cult babies that like knew this, right? But everyone has an opinion on it when you tell them it. And their opinion is usually to immediately start trying to convince me that the trick doesn't exist. Right? That because they didn't know about it, that it doesn't exist. And then once I convince them or once I show them that they exist, then they start trying to argue that that's not the point of the game.
Yeah.
At which point I'm like, I mean, for me, the point of the game was it was very clicky and fun and fast. And yes, we now know I'm autistic. But like, this to me is exactly a parallel of when like white people are finding out about privilege, right? And they're like, no way, like that doesn't exist, right? Like as their minds are being opened. And then once it's like, okay, you can see it, it's here, it clearly exists. Now it's like, oh, but that's not the point, or you're not supposed to use it, or like,
No, yeah, they solve cognitive conflict, but that's because of the lack of consequences, which is what comes with privilege. The privilege of not having natural consequences based on socialized like systems and stuff. Because other cultures, we roast each other. Like you're gonna be told the truth more often. Anyway, I was realizing like if you have conflict and you resolve it with curiosity and care, that means you're in this direction of like, helpful. Definitely can be, I think, in a community or see themselves in community right now. And I think it's not like a forever place, but a lot of people respond to it with like chaos and comfort, like the comfort of certainty or like objectivity that isn't an othering.
I mean, this is such a good time to be talking about comfort and conflict because the number one question I am getting right now from people is like, OMG, how am I supposed to survive my MAGA families for the holidays? Right? Which is like, again, this is the comfort thing, like I chose conflict, I chose to have the conversations and to tear things apart and look at where we came from. And so I don't really get invited much to holidays anymore. However,
for now, family. Sorry.
Oh, like one of the interesting things one of our leadership professors said when I was doing my master's was, you don't ever have to argue with people. You can just ask questions. Just ask them more and more questions. And that fits with like your curiosity thing.
Yeah.
And one of I've been telling people, I'm like, look, so, for everyone that hears this podcast too, like, you're not breaking any MAGA people's brainwashing this holiday season, right? Like, they have just won their apocalypse. Their savior
Yeah.
is coming on January 20th, right? Like, they
Mm-hmm.
are full in it. And so I'm telling them, like, be good at engaging and disengaging.
Yeah.
Ask more
Oh,
questions,
yeah.
just ask them more questions. And then my third thing was like, disassociation is a tool, you can just like do a little chant and like zone out.
You can also
But
physically remove yourself. Like
yeah,
I
and
never did that. Like I was one, like it took me a while to realize you can walk away. I've recently watched one of my friends who's a white woman, like just she has been able to engage in these just like a little bit more artistic behaviors and been okay. Whereas in my that's in my opinion, we talk about it and she'll just be like, all right, I'm walking away now. Like mid party, it's too loud. She's done. I that's an option. We can do that. And and there's little things like that I think is where community helps. Because when you had said you're not invited at holidays, I originally said not yet, but I realized you meant like those specific
yes,
family
yeah.
holidays. But that you just don't know what you don't know yet, and when you leave this one community, you open that isn't a community in my opinion, it's a group. You find yourself just learning these random things and being in other situations during the holidays that you wouldn't have assumed would be the case. And for me, I like to I realize a lot of the language in narcissism right now, like in the world of narcissism, it's very none of it is like self-explanatory in my opinion. Even Darvo, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. Darvo is not a word. I get weird about words, which I wanted to talk to you about also, because you said hyperlexic and discussed a little bit about it, and now my what anyway. And then usually with numbers, but not mean with numbers, but you see like the passion anyway. But with Darvo specifically, I've always been like, yeah, but it doesn't tell you also what to do. It doesn't tell you what it is. It kind of gives you like, okay, they're Darvoing. Then they say gray rock. What? Don't ignore them. You could have just said that. Instead, I also realized love bombing. I would rather us discuss it as love overwhelm. I think that would be a lot better because I think that's more centered on the experience of it and not are they or are they not love bombing. It's like, are you feeling overwhelmed? Is your time being taken up? Have you never experienced this before? Love overwhelm. And also like I don't know, it's like a nice little round word. But for me, I still took Darvo and said, all right, that's what it is. I tend to go deactivate, repeat very often in response to Darvo because gray rock, okay, sure. I don't help me. But to remember to deactivate, because what they are doing is meant to activate you, and you have to acknowledge, accept that first, and then go, okay, I'm activated. We'd be skipping that one and go, I'm activated. They do this a lot. This is going to repeat very often. I have to repeat this very often. And then you can ask questions. When I practice questionity, all right? We ask the questions and go, why just say that? It can be as simple as that because when you deactivate, you can say, what'd you say? Say that again. And it's as simple as you didn't even do anything. A lot of times in my comment sections, you'll see that's what I do. And I've practiced this for a couple of years now. And a lot of times it's just like, okay,
Yeah.
so now what?
I mean, I love what you did with Darvo, but I also feel like this is a really good example of like the person that gives you the solution is not necessarily the person that is like defining the problem or defining the term, right? So like, I mean, we're obviously talking about this because you're going to contribute a little bit of some solutions and suggestions to Culting of America,
But
but
that's kind of like what?
yeah, but like I get all the time, right? People are like, "Oh, what are the solutions?" Or someone just asked me today like, "Oh, are you giving people a bunch of self-defense tips in case like these workplace tactics or these cult tactics are being used against them?" And I'm like, I just looked at that question and felt overwhelmed because I'm like, I've just written a whole book just about defining the problem and
Oh
helping
my
you see
goodness.
it, because it's complicated, because it's DARPA, because there's so many parts to it. And then but you didn't have to come up with DARPA, Rebecca, and if you did, you would have named it better. But but you came across
Exactly.
somebody else is like, here's the problem, and you're like,
Hmm.
oh, I can put suggested solution and
Hmm.
response here, and this is how it's supposed to go. Why do you
Yeah.
get pissed off when you don't come up with the problem and the solution at the same time?
And the perfectionism that I have to, by saying, okay, Darvo isn't, I can have my little autistic hyperfixation on it and go, I don't like this, and say it every single time, but I still use it and still respect it. And I say why I don't like it, and it's personal to me, and because I have a thing. I'm not saying it's not worthy. I'm using it.
Right.
It's nuance. It's having
I'm
not the binary.
still gonna put love bombing in the book
Of
because to talk
course.
about cults I have to because that's the
Of
word they
course.
use. But I also
Right.
now think we're gonna put a note from White Woman Whisperer about love overwhelm, when we talk about love bombing.
Right. It's also like thinking about language differently. And I've noticed that a lot of white people, because of the anti-identity of whiteness, are looking for labels. I'm about to use a lot of alliterations. A lot of alliterations. Labels for their liberation, right? But really, language can liberate you, but the labels aren't gonna do it. And
Yeah.
people are looking for this identifying, these identifying words, but really it's the language. You giving me hyperlexic, which I've probably heard the word before, but the way you described it randomly in a video about something else, I think about knitting, right? Of course. Um,
Oh my
I'm
God.
like, my life has changed.
Let me tell you the story of this, right? So somebody asked me because I've started talking about how I'm neurodivergent, right? And it was readers of my book, so my language, right, that I put down on paper, and then people read that and they were like, you should look into this, right? And I
Before
did.
TikTok,
And
never.
so talking about my journey on my social media and unmasking on all of that. And somebody asked me, they were like, just out of curiosity, are you dyslexic? And my response was like, oh no, me and my child are both hyperlexic. And I know this, and I'm like, my husband is dyslexic, right? And by the way, I never had the term hyperlexic explained to me. I just heard it once, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what we are, right?
Mm.
Because hyperlexia. Um, and so this person, when I had said, no, I'm not dyslexic, and they just very kindly responded to me with a definition of dyslexia that includes hyperlexia. Uh,
Really?
and so, to me, I feel like neurodivergency is kind of like being on both ends of the bell curve. I always
Mm.
say my little 3-person family is very neurospicy, and we're always in any skill or anything, we're either at the very top or the very bottom. I'm
Yeah.
incredibly intelligent with language, but I can't orient myself in the world at all. And by the
No.
way, my husband, who is dyslexic, who is a pilot, they joke that 3/4 of pilots are dyslexic.
Mm.
And traditionally dyslexic people are very good at spatial awareness. Maybe because their minds are not being taken up with all the words and the orders they have to go in.
Right. I have no number sense, which I learned about during the GMAT thing. I scored so low. I tried kind of hard, but it was all memorizing to me. I didn't have an inherent sense for, if I think now about what's 8 times 8, I only know it because I memorized it, right? Not because I feel. And I know
Yeah.
that people tend to they think in blocks. And if you take one from here, I was
Yeah.
what are you talking
And
about? English, 90
then,
something percent.
yep, same. And then
Easy,
meanwhile,
easy.
obviously neurodivergency can show up differently, but I relate very much to this definition of hyperlexia that it's you're not necessarily always reading. You're sometimes just taking pictures of all the words kind of in your brain. You're just kind of memorizing. You're memorizing the text. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
what it looks like. Sometimes it's what it sounds like. One of my basic skills my whole life, because I've been in some way or the other, I've been a performer since I was one.
Mhm.
right? Singing, dancing performer, acting performer in the cult, then briefer in college, and or in the army, right? And then on.
Hmm.
And one of my primary skills is once I've heard something that sounds good, like I can just say it like that for the rest of my life. Or once I like come up with something, right? And this is why you and I are both good at putting
Yeah.
words to things like common experiences, but other people haven't put words to them yet in quite that.
Yeah.
Like love bombing is the great, this is the problem. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm love bombing you. What you're feeling is love overwhelm. And then here's the
Yeah.
solution. This is what you have to do. Right.
Yeah.
And like,
And look at your right and heal
coming out
here
of the
first.
Um,
Oh,
it was also very interesting for me at the same time as I was like, yes, I 100% have hyperlexia. Now I understand this more, realizing like it's on the dyslexia spectrum, right? Which is just to say
yeah.
anything outside of the ordinary, right? Whether you read really, really bad or really, really good is abnormal, right? Like you're
Right.
outside of the normal range.
Gifted and
I don't
talented
know.
is special ed.
Yeah, I don't know if you had this with crochet and knitting because it's also a language. But
Mm.
like my daughter, and then I think myself are the only people I've seen just pick up, you just see the thing one time and then you just do it. Like, like my daughter, I taught her to knit. I showed her. She was 5 years old and I just showed her. And I have a video of me showing her long tail cast on and she just doing it right there, like the first time.
Yeah. And
Um,
I needed YouTube. Like the concept of I would watch someone's hands do it. And then I was like, okay, now I'm excited. I'm gonna go and that's why I liked these things that are seamless and like I just like doing the activity. And I as long as I learned how to do this raglan increase, whatever, it was
that
easy
was
enough.
pretty.
Um and I just do like one thing a lot. I enjoy it. But the thing
Thinking
about hyperlexia and the thing about gifted and talented, right? It's we were just challenges for the teachers on both ends. Um, but there is praise to one because you can at some point, you've been able to use those uh, or slow down enough to read the words. The thing that really got me when I was looking it up is like you can be reading the words but not comprehend what you're reading. You can read when you're really young but you can't comprehend some of this stuff. But I can read that word, but do I know what I read? No. That's why I have to read it 5 times before I can finally go, oh, that's what she was saying here.
my 8-year-old is using the word metaphorically right now a lot, but she doesn't understand what it means. So she uses it in a lot of really funny ways. But my eight
I love
year old
that.
is using the word metaphorically,
Yeah, because
right?
it
But
just
here's
sounds
another
good.
interesting thing, right? Because one of them
Hmm.
is called hyper. We like that, right? Like, because we like things to be a lot, for you to be like really good at something, for you to be a prodigy when you're young, right?
Yeah.
So, and then one of them is called right? Dyslexia. Well, like,
Hmm.
my husband is a retired special operations pilot that flew some of the most difficult missions in the world. At one point, he was the only Chinook helicopter pilot in the entire US Army that had all three of these very different qualifications. So like, he wasn't anything,
Nothing.
like, no, he didn't need to go to college when he was 18 and do a bunch of book learning, but he used his brain the way it was in a way that worked for him, you know?
And if books were written with dyslexic people in mind and there was a version written with, and I think there's like a type of writing where it's bold at certain parts of the word so it's easier to read. I remember reading that and going, whoa, this is so much easier.
I
And so we
First
could
and the
just do
last
that.
letter. I
And then
think
they
it's
would,
just as long as the first and the last letter are in the right place, your brain figures it out with context.
yeah, and I
So
think
it's
they like block
that.
the,
It's probably just bolding the first and last letter of each word or something.
yeah, I think it's like bolding the first two and the last, it's easy enough to do. But if we valued, I don't think we also value slow. We don't value anything slow because sense of urgency is a tenet of white supremacy. And so hyper anything, we're like, well, that's a good problem.
And
We're
then
going
to
to
bring
do
in
a lot.
and then to bring in capitalism here to tie in how stupid it is, right? Like, yeah, and then people go, oh, but that's harder, right? Like not everyone's dyslexic, so it's harder. So why would we do it, right? But but look at this. Like right now, you can study ASL in high school as a language, right?
Oh, I would
And
have
one of
loved.
the jobs that you can grow up to do that all the Gen Alpha and Gen Z kids are excited about right now is be like do sign language at concerts. Have you seen
Yes,
these videos? Right? Where these people are like rocking out to the concert doing the sign language.
the
And
whole
like
experience.
think about that. People had to think like deaf people might want to go to concerts, you know, like they can experience this part of it, like blah blah blah, and then do it. And then whoever owned the business or whatever had to be like, yes, this is worth it. But now it's like this is a whole new job that young people can do. You know,
Right.
like it didn't make anything worse. It just added awesomeness to the world, including the videos of these people dancing and doing sign language. Like,
Right. With the whole rising tides raise all boats or whatever, the whole, you benefit everyone, then everyone benefits. Like I think we focus too much on, I heard someone talk about the rights versus the responsibilities of these places. And do they have to and should they have to and whatever. But like if we focus more on responsibilities
yeah.
than the rights, but that's just
Yeah.
not how
And maybe
we're set
maybe
up.
we'll be able to fit into airplane seats still.
It maybe would matter more that the people exist in those spaces comfortably, the right to comfort, whose comfort, right? Because the CEOs or whoever,
Right.
you know, because I think it's easy to say, you know, keep the peace or don't rock the boat. I actually decided I don't like that. Rock the boat. Boats are meant to rock. That's the whole, they're built like that. What do you mean don't rock? It's already rocking. You're gaslighting me. Don't make waves. I can't do that. I'm just existing here telling you that's why the boat is rocking. And they're like, well, it wasn't until you came in here and woke me up. And now I can feel the rocking because you woke,
Don't wake
you know.
up daddy. Don't wake up
Don't
daddy.
exactly. It's full circle. It's all, you know.
My favorite one of this is when people are like, "Ah, Daniela, why do you have such a chip on your shoulder?" I'm like, "Why aren't you yelling at the guy with the axe to stop chipping at my shoulder?" You know, like,
I tell you, the way my brain hates that one because I'm every time chip, every time Dorito, I'm just seeing a Dorito. I never, until maybe this very moment, did I realize, and you said this before, but maybe this very moment, I'm realizing it's a chip. Like, that's white people stuff. We don't axe things. I was a chip on your
that is white people stuff. With our camping axes, you probably don't have a camping axe, Rebecca.
like I don't know. I guess maybe it's like a heavy, like a boulder is on your shoulder and it's like really heavy. I don't know what I thought was happening, and like where did that come from? Where did chip on your and like why is that my you have a chip?
I mean, and definitely victim blaming language, right? So I feel
Yeah.
like it goes in your narcissism stuff with the crazy language because like it's victim blaming. Like, why do you have this chip on your shoulder? Haley, come back. Did you have something to say?
Chip on your shoulder. My literal brain. It's like I'll never my mom always laughs at how upset I got at the people stopping and standing on the street because they were right under a sign that said no stopping or standing, right? And they were stopped and they were standing. And I was like, "Mom, they're going to get arrested." And she to this day will cry laughing because I just meant it so deeply. And then I'm still mad about it cuz call it something else. No parking here. Move, don't put your car here. Don't let it be here at all. Go away. Like it could have and she just cracks up every time. And she said, I would, you know, I babysat for this couple who's adults. And I said, you babysat big people? And she always reminds me of that. Because I took it, just say what you mean. But now I have the word. Because it doesn't feel like a special skill, right? To comprehend differently, Amelia Bedelia style. Um, but we can be taken advantage of, I feel like, a little bit easier because people with dyslexia, at least as far as the people I know in my life who have it, and I didn't even know, now that I think about it, more sense of self and like ability to stand up and go, no, I want to leave. Um, and I wonder if that's the whole taking a beat, waiting a second because they've had to. I don't know. I don't have that experience, but there's, like you said with your husband, like with my friend who has it, I'm like, she's so much more aware emotionally and socially and in like really knows how to, that's my friend that emails. I don't care if it takes her longer to read something.
So,
Like,
'cause we've just been busy memorizing all the books and putting
right.
all the
What
knowledge.
value does exactly. I'm here like, well, I can tell you why I'm mad about this word.
I've
No.
got one now.
Good.
So when I was younger, I have no idea what age I was, but I was a kid, and one of those PSAs came on that was like, "Don't drink and drive; it could cost you your life, or you'll go to jail or whatever." And I look at my dad, and I'm like, "Dad, you break the law." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "You drink Diet Dr. Pepper while you drive every day."
Yeah, we just and like everything's so serious, it's so culty, and like you think about it, like of course we get taken advantage of, and I wonder like there's a lot connected between I think autism and narcissism. I'm just gonna say that I think that there's not a lot of there's new discussion on both. There's a lot of what that silence gets in the way of things, and then like weaponization of diagnoses and labels, and that's why I was talking about labels before. Like that should not be what the conversation is, because that's more of the thing we're trying not to do. And say, well, I think this sounds more like,
Yeah.
especially with autism, I feel like there's a lot of
Because I get to the point of like, does it even
you know
matter? Right. And
right.
obviously, like, we started out this conversation being like, words are important. And like, yes, words are important. But also, so like in my work with cult stuff, right? And like, let's go back to AA because they're fun to pick on. Right. And just like, everyone is like,
I
well,
bet.
what's a cult? What's the line? Right? What's the difference? Or we're not a cult, you horrible person, blah, blah, blah. And so at first so now I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter what you call it, right? Telling people they're going to die if they're not in your group, that is a cult tactic, right?
Mm-hmm.
12-step programs built on kind of like coercion, manipulation, shame, and group critique. That is a cult tactic.
Right.
And on the flip side, cult scholars and people that work in the school field are picking up the damage of your people, and they're coming out of your group with the same traumas as the real, quote unquote, real cult survivors. So
Yeah.
I don't think it matters what you call it, right? It's not like if
No.
you don't call a group a cult, there's no harm. And if you do call, because people also act like if I call a good group, quote unquote, good group a cult, all of a sudden, like I've irreparably harmed this group. And I'm like,
Are we okay?
I'm actually not that magic or powerful that I can just make your group one of the most extreme groups, like just with my words.
And even if that were true, okay, so now what? I already said it. So, like, people just want to police. And you realize that's the issue, right? They just want to police the discomfort.
Like, yeah. And
Their own, actually.
that's even what, kind of you were saying with the love bombing, right? Where it's like,
Mm.
oh, is this love bombing or are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Because if you
Right.
are, it's funny you call it overwhelmed. Sometimes I call it feeling high on people or feeling the glow of charisma.
Mm.
Like when you walk away after 20 minutes to an hour with a person and you feel like you are platonically or emotionally or sapiosexually in love with them, question that more. Like, right? You've just been charismaed on, and
Mm.
they should question that more. not less. And then it's funny because then I always tell them, so like when we're done with this conversation and you're feeling that glow, and then I just watch their brains break in real time and they go, oh, wait, but you're doing it to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like you have to understand, you have to talk about it. When they say sunlight is the best disinfectant, ew. But I like the sentiment, I think. Because I don't think that's true science-wise, but we have to talk about it first. Is it?
Mhm.
Is that true? Oh, anyway.
My
But
understanding is that it's the radiation.
Sorry, what?
it's the
It's the
radiation?
radiation.
Okay, but okay. So then it is true. But if
Just ruined the
Here's another great one. You
very
catch more
white
flies.
people.
You catch
white
more
people.
flies with honey than with vinegar, right?
Yeah.
That sentence. It's the opposite. It's literally the
Is it
opposite.
really?
Vinegar or like a little bit of wine at the bottom of a wine glass with a fly strip in it, you're going to get all of them. You literally catch more flies with vinegar than with honey. And I get so mad every time I hear that phrase. I have to like rant about it because I'm like, who came up with that? I mean, obviously, definitely a white man. We know the answer there. But
Yeah.
like,
I love that. I didn't hear that.
it's not
Sorry.
even true. It's not even true.
I can't believe that. I'm writing that. It's definitely going on my list of
Have
phrases we
I
hate.
have I told
We
y'all about the crapshoot thing yet?
crapshoot. Oh
Since we're just
gosh.
talking. Oh, wait. So when people say like we don't know how it's going to turn out, it's a crapshoot. They're talking about the dice game. The you
Okay.
you
Okay.
you roll the
Okay.
dice.
Okay.
Yeah. You
Okay.
no, you're going to like where this is going.
I'm nervous.
So it's the dice game. I started hearing the term crapshoot long before I knew that there was a dice game called craps.
Yeah.
So literally until I was like 25, and then still now because it lasted that long. When somebody says we don't know how it's going to go, it's a crapshoot. I see a man sitting in a chair in a dark room because I'm very visual, and there's a chute over him and a lever. He has to pull the lever, and maybe he gets covered in crap, and maybe he doesn't, and that's the good outcome.
Like the weirdest reverse dunk tank of poop. Okay. Okay. Like. Okay. 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 Okay.
I was like 8, and that's just what came in my head, and I learned not to question things, so I'm like, yep, this is what
See, that's
everybody
what
is
I'm talking about.
visualizing.
I feel like they're setting us up for failure, and I feel like because at stopping and standing, that told me. Now I love my mom. I'm not saying her laughing at me because it genuinely was funny to her because I believed so hard in the stopping and standing, and my concern for these people was real though,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like, you're silly.
Also, this is how idioms work, right? And so this is how
The
cliches
flies.
work, and this is how cliches become thought terminating, thought stopping cliches,
Yeah, they're
right?
just
Because
wrong.
when you think about it as we're saying it, which by the way, every single time I say the word knitter now, I am very careful and very slow, and I mostly knitting.
I love that
But
because I can't not hear it, so
but
I'm gonna share with you.
I had this happen, and of course, having the most extreme version of the story, like this is how I realized how racist the cult was, right? And I was like 20 years old or something, and someone went to grab something, and I was like, "Get your cotton pick," and I stopped myself right there, and I was like. My mom used to say that all the time. Get your off this, and like it was just an
It's
idiom
just because it's just yeah.
that was said. And this has happened to me like dozens of times, right?
Isn't
Leading,
that
of course,
crazy?
to this being like it's in your brain. And until you get all of those idioms, I did one TikTok post explaining to people what thought stepping cliches were and then asking them for ones that they've heard. And it is over 500 now. Like, at
Yeah.
one point I was going to put a list in the book. Now it's just going to have to be a link or like a QR code people can go to because it's like so long. But I want people to have the whole thing because
The boys will
nobody
be
read
boys.
all of these, right? Yeah, boys will be boys. When someone points out to you that that's one, or when someone points
Yeah,
out that today's the first day of your life is the thing a cult leader from Synanon made up, a cult that, came out of AA and led to the troubled teen industry, teenage prison
right.
camp. And like, it doesn't mean anything. Today's the first day of the rest of your life. Like, what does
Yeah.
that mean?
And like this is why I say language is liberating, but it's also like learning about it is liberating, and being able to question it and not use it to police. I am never using it to say don't say love bombing around me. I never am saying replace it. I'm saying this is what I learned.
And to tie back into that first question, right? This person wasn't actually trying to have a curious conversation. What does
Exactly.
black and white mean? Oh, they said there's no such thing as black and white people. I'm like, yeah, that's true. But are you trying to have that conversation, or are you just trying to police my language because you want to shut me down, you
And
know?
I think the other thing about that people don't realize, it's not just you. What you're saying is you think being black is a deformity. When people whisper black, I realize this after a while. It's like they see being black. That's why when they think I talk about white people, they think I'm insulting. I must be insulting. Um, I'm just saying that we're black, but it's black people because there's a bad. I wouldn't want to be seen as black. I would. The way you experience blackness is the way, not the way we're black, and we could tell in white people sometimes where there's this weird thing they do with the L. I'm not sure. You can tell they don't say it a lot, and it's like black. Something happens online. I'm going to tell you, black people know about it because we be like, what? There's a certain type, and that's not how it sounds here, right? Because you say it. But there's something that happens. But there's this, well, I wouldn't want to talk about it.
Yes, because we're told we're not supposed to talk about it, right? We're not
And
supposed to talk about
deformities
it. We're not
aren't a
supposed to say
problem.
color. We're not supposed to say black. And so,
Right.
like, we want to say it American.
We're not supposed to talk about money. I wonder
Everybody,
why.
yeah.
Especially old money doesn't want to talk. That's very improper to talk about money and talk about where you got to talk about race or religion or politics or anything that affects people.
You'll be happy to know that in Culting of America, when I talk about the weaponization of secrecy, I talk about don't talk about your salaries.
Good, because like that's also right to comfort. Whose comfort? We became comfortable not talking about it, and like the chaos of. But we do talk about it behind here, and it would be really uncomfortable not to. But I also lost it. Just lost it. What? Wait. What were you saying? You're gonna keep in there? Secrecy. Okay, secrecy. Because you were saying one time that maybe there is a place for secrets or something. And I remember thinking afterwards, like, I think secrets make sense as long as there is an assumption and a knowledge that this is temporary. Like, it can only be a secret for so long. That has to be a part of it. And that's not
yeah,
how that's not, you can't
not
weaponize
how
that.
government secrets work, because government secrets are secrets for 75 years, specifically because then you'll be dead, right? Like, because
Oh my
that's a
God.
life cycle.
Oh my God. And like, what does that, maybe stop it.
Because they're saying it's a permanent secret. And I have been talking about this more because people are like, well, what do you think is the difference between, cults weaponizing secrets and like national secrets? And I'm like, I don't think there's a difference. I think the people at the top are deciding what needs to be kept secret. And I think from my own observation, in all the places that the secrets are being handled, toxic behavior is also being covered up by the need for secrets.
Yeah. Like, none of these people are like have gone to therapy and healed from capitalism and all the trauma that their parents have, like the system is going to keep systeming, but in the where secrecy is a part of the thing, oh my goodness, like fraternities and sororities, like, which is like the government and corporate America.
I'm telling people all the time, like, as Americans, we do not know what is going on with our international relations. What you are seeing on the news, where you were seeing the vice president say during her presidential campaign, like, there is maybe 10% of it they can talk about because they learned it under a secret clearance. Oh my God, the number of questions I am getting about drones right now. People literally reaching out to me Like, hey, can you talk about drones? No, nobody can talk about drones. Like, they will not give me enough yarn in federal prison. And so I can't talk about drones, obviously. Like,
We would all
Also,
send you yarn.
like, um, when you were saying like people asking you for solutions and you're doing all this, have we not done enough? When people are kind of like, yeah, but here's more things based off this video you just gave me. I'm going to need you to remember the context of I just gave you a video on stuff. How about you think about that for 5 seconds before you're asking me for the next thing? You haven't even gone to my page to like do, you need to slow down.
oh, that's the best part. That's the best part of this at the end of this conversation where this person's like, so then they're like, okay, well, what are your qualifications on this, right?
Oh,
And I was like, okay, you want to go there? Okay. Harvard educated organizational psychologist. I have a podcast with a Black creator where we are actively discussing this, and this will certainly be the next topic of conversation. I've done a lot of reading on it. And I was like, how about you? Right? And so they go, oh, well, okay, fine. Clearly it's an important discussion. What resources would you recommend?
oh.
And so I said, I would recommend starting with Fearing the Black Body by Dr. Sabrina Strings, which is a book I love to send people to break their brains. And then, hey, come listen to Hey White Women, our podcast about this. And guess what the response was? Oh, I don't do podcasts.
Sorry, I had to walk away. I just erased a segment on my board that wrote, I don't do insert, right? And that's the right to comfort. I don't do
Literally,
Patreon.
when
I
I
don't
saw
do.
this, I was like, I cannot wait to tell Rebecca. Like, oh,
Oh my
like,
God.
of course you don't do podcasts. Of course
It
you
almost
don't.
like feels good in that way. I call those violent validations. Because
Yep.
of course not. Of course not.
Yep.
Because none of this was about anything. It was just about silencing his own cognitive conflict. It wasn't about and the only way to do that was to silence you, apparently, which is a white specialty. It's like, no. I can't be wrong. And she's not saying stuff that works with me not being wrong. All right.
And
Here's
this is
this.
and this is part of what I told my editor about the book, because she was like, "Are you sure you want to end the your whole book with your whole theory that you wrote with like someone else kind of giving the culmination?"
Mm.
And I was like, I am not an expert on answering the good stuff, right? Like I have chosen not to be an expert to that. And part
Yeah.
of this is because I'm not giving the satisfaction to the every day, Rebecca, every day. Last month, I cleared $10,000 in my business. Last month, I got paid almost $5,000 for 1 hour of my time to go talk to college students. And almost every day or every other day, I have a man telling me I'll never build a successful business without talking about the good groups and the solutions. And so now
See?
I'm like, no, I refuse. Like, even when I have solutions, I'm not giving them to these people because,
That's
like,
how I feel sometimes, where I'm like, I'm at the next like level of it where, that's why I like the Patreon and I like pushing people to Patreon. And I understand there's people who don't do bleh, whatever. Fine, because I need you to already be a little uncomfortable to, you have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone at least a little bit.
do you think this is just hitting me now? Do you think this is because like white men and white supremacy, like they have to do everything by themselves or they feel like it doesn't count? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is so crazy because I
Mm-hmm.
get so much crap for not writing my book by myself, right? It's literally like, and the way people talk about it, it's like it shouldn't count or it's not
Wow.
fair. It's not fair that Daniela Young has a Big Macmillan book because she didn't unearth all her trauma by herself, go into a hole, get an MFA, like spend 2 decades writing this, like all by herself, right? But here's the thing I've found out. First of all, like I'm fucking proud of of this book. This book has
but that's
this book has every like kudos that you can have. And guess what? I'm allowed to be proud of it because I didn't write it by myself. Right? So when people are like, "Oh, it's so well written," I'm like, "Thank you. We had such a great team," you know? And
right.
so and like it's not better to do it by yourself. When you do something by yourself,
You're
you
also
don't get to
lying.
share it with anyone, right? Like I've asked you to write a chapter of this book. So every time this book gets some kind of kudos, I'm going to be like, "Rebecca," you know, like
It's a community experience then, right? Because I come with community, you have community.
gonna,
Perfect.
yeah. And I don't think we're gonna find the answers by ourselves, but I don't think I want to. Like it's not fun to be all by yourself up at the top. Like
When I talk about when that's gorgeous. I've been noticing that it's gorgeous. I would talk about the climbing the ladder and why you should bail on it, which we'll talk another time. And it's wrapped in barbed wire, and white people get boots and bootstraps and stuff, and we don't. Anyway, I had this whole thing, but realizing like, okay, but at the top of the ladder, they barely have enough room to get any shade. They're all sunburnt, and they don't wash their hands, and like because the water's down here where everybody else.
yeah.
And like
And,
you don't want that.
and add this to they're always afraid of falling off.
They spend the whole time suffocating in here, like, and then be like, "Oh, nobody else can get up here because we'll have less room and it'll be less interesting." How about just be down here with the people? And yeah, they're throwing their stuff off, but like we know when it happens and all that. They're burnt. They're so burnt and miserable. And they're like, "But our view is better." I'm not going to spend my time arguing with you, sir. But that fixation on humbling you is a facet. It will always be. And that's why I can't give a lot of, well, not can't, I don't give people a lot of room and in my identity, because it's like, you're just going to deal with what I'm telling you or not. I'm not going to qualify because it will never be enough when their goal is to humble you.
And
But Black women keep trying.
also, to quote our vice president, some of us don't aspire to be humble. You know, this is turning
Absolutely.
into a whole money-making avenue for me. Is just they call them like flex talks. I have a
Mm-hmm.
playlist that's just called bro shutdowns. You know, and like
Mm-hmm.
these guys, these men want to insist on underestimating us no matter what we do, right? Fine. You want to roll up and judge me because I'm fluffy and wrapped in yarn? Like, I'm gonna slap you across the face with my coin from President Obama or my army captain's bars or like these
Mm-hmm.
things that I've done. And like they get so offended when I don't just like sit down and lose. It's hilarious. And it's like
Right. Like, because they're expecting, like, they've been given the script or they've heard the script, and then you come online and we can do so many different things that it doesn't go along with any script they've been given or
it's
can
just
watch on TV.
oh my
So we
gosh.
just come in and I'm like, hey, knitting white people. And they're
Yeah.
like, what's your
I've been
expertise?
continually reminding women this, you know, that like the quilting circles of the Underground Railroad weren't
Yeah.
getting regularly busted. In World War II, both sides used knitting spies, right? Both sides. And yet the men of both sides so heavily underestimated women that the
Mm-hmm.
knitting spies were not regularly being caught. So like and this is part of what I told
I'm
my
saying.
editor when I was telling her, you know, I want someone else to contribute to this chapter. I'm like, a lot of what is going on right now, you know, like when I went to Intel school 15 years ago, the most dangerous disaster in the world was the internet coming down, right? And still is.
Yeah.
And then it was focused on terrorism, right? 30 men working 30 minutes, they would say, could take it down, right? But now, like, all the billionaires own it, right? We're gonna stop shopping when he comes into office, and then they could just turn off the infrastructure, right? And so, anyways, all this to
Hmm.
say, one of the interesting things in Afghanistan is when you're fighting the country with the highest tech network, you just go low tech, right? You just go out and do community in person. It doesn't matter who's listening in the sky if you're just knocking on the person's door and not using your cell phone, right? And I was like,
Right.
if you put between me and Rebecca, like who knows more about how to do that and how to go make like in-person community, when the revolution really starts, if he really does go like as bad as people are going to say, we're going to have to go low tech. We're going to have to follow community organizers. We're going to have to listen to Black women who understand the oppression better than all of us. And like, yeah.
And that's why it's like valuing your apocalypse skills now. And that's what I've preached since the beginning. And don't see them as, and like go beyond financial capital, do social capital.
Apocalypse skills yet?
Huh?
Have we talked about our apocalypse skills yet on this podcast?
No? Yeah. No, probably. Yeah.
Can we end like that? Can we end like that?
Done.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to start. I have a really crazy one.
Okay.
So I spent like 10 years thinking about this, and like obviously I'm going to be like spinning the yarns. Like I'm going to be the storyteller, which is very important. But okay, so in the end of my book, I have a physical and mental breakdown, and I'm evacuated from war. And one of the symptoms is that I'm lactating, which can be the sign of a brain tumor. Okay.
Yeah.
Not going to give the whole thing away.
Sure.
But fast forward to a few years later, I have a kid, and I make enough milk to feed 7 babies, which is champagne problems, because your kids still can't eat when they're drowning through a fire hose. Anyways, and I do feed, donate, blah, 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 7 different babies, right?
Wow.
And then the lactation never really goes away, but my prolactin levels are not raised. So essentially, I'm just a starter baby nurser. So when the apocalypse comes, I'm going to be sitting at the fireplace, like nursing all the like 1 to 7-year-olds, because that's when you do when you don't have enough food. And nobody's going to kill me because I'm going to be nursing the babies. So
there you go. Oh my God, I can't go after that. What okay, apocalypse. I'll make everybody go, huh? Which
That's
is powerful.
You're gonna be leading the building of the new world, I think.
Yeah, I'm gonna like the people who are like, so we said someone yells race in a crowded building. Da, da, da. I'm one of those people like, hold on, let me go to the door where everyone's falling out of. Go, no, that way. Just go that way. Trust me, that way, guys. Yep, I see you. Look at me. That way, right? Because I'm not the one to tell you exactly what to do, but I'll tell you where to go and what not to do, which is hit me. I'm trying to help you. I guess I'm yelling at you, but I'm also yelling at you for your own good. Catch up, like that. That's what I'm gonna be doing, and then sleeping.
Yeah.
Waking up and doing it all over again, apparently.
Yeah. No, you're definitely one of the you're definitely one of the leaders in the apocalypse still.
Oh,
yeah.
hey.
And we'll be making the clothes, right?
Yeah, because it's true. The leaders aren't going to look like what leaders have looked like in the past, and even the way that MLK and everyone who's dead but also impactful is talked about now, I think is made for us to feel not like we could do stuff like that. That I deified black and white, all this stuff so long ago. Martin Luther King was 39 when he was killed. He did all that stuff before he was 39. And I remind myself of that all the time.
Jasmine Crockett right now.
Let's do the alive day. Yeah.
I just love her so much. And I'm like, we're just
authentic.
watching.
The only thing about Texas I like is Jasmine Crockett.
Okay, right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like seeing that now and seeing the community leaders now, because I'm thinking, what we'll talk about at the end of your book is mostly like who to listen to, who do I listen to, what does it kind of look like, how to, where to start. And like I said, it'll be go this way, go this way. If it sounds like this, if they're calling people liars, I don't think that's a good call. Unless that's a whole other thing. But yeah, liberation through like having the conversations just like we're doing and having the language, but not policing language, not having value systems associated with it and hyper is good and dis is bad and all that stuff. No, just information and appreciation is like
Yeah.
It doesn't sell, rage bait, but it works.
It's a whole nother conversation. All right,
Yeah.
Haley, what's your apocalypse skill?
Considering I have so many sensory issues and the outside gives me hives, I feel pretty useless. But I was thinking about it. I have, when you're pregnant and you can smell like the tiniest hint of everything? That never
Mhm.
went away from me. So I'll be like the poison sniffer or something,
There
or
you
like
go.
there's a fire 10 miles away. It is, we walked into our house
I don't have
and we
that.
thought something had been fixed or something. This was like a few weeks ago. And he's like, did the repair guys come? And I go, no, nobody's been in the house. Like if
Also, let me tell you,
I know everything about a person just, and it's not
But
weird.
yeah,
It's not
you're
like
not
I'm
considering
sniffing
a bunch of
people.
skills.
It's
yeah,
like
and,
I'm a foot away and I know if you have a
and
dog,
because
I know if you have a cat.
yeah, and like, look, when the apocalypse comes, right? It's gonna be because the neurotypicals broke the world. So
Hmm.
obviously, it's gonna be like the neurospicy people, right? The marginalized people that are like, okay, that way didn't work. So now
Yeah.
let's pick up, now that it has all exploded, right? Let's like pick up these pieces and do something
Yeah.
different with it. It's
And
funny
we've been
because
saying it for so long.
I'm always
It'll be
worried
it.
that we're not going to find enough like yarn in the apocalypse, but I'm like, no, I'm just going to be pulling apart other stuff and like
I was
inventing
just
it, right?
we
Like,
have so much stuff already. And it's like I remember I started crocheting thinking, even if I don't, I can just undo this thing I just did and just do it again. I don't have to that will still be fun. It'll feel
I'm
weird to
making a
make the
purse.
decision, but then you just do it. Uncomfortable for a second. Worth it.
yeah,
I
taking
love
out
this.
crochet or knitting feels almost as calming as putting it together, So
Yes.
just got to be open to things. Well, this has been such a lovely conversation as always.
Yes,
Thank you.
so many good things.
Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for contributing a
Thanks.
chapter to this book. I'm so, so, so excited about it. And
Me.
thanks to all of our listeners. We have crossed the 10,000 download mark on the podcast itself. We get so many great comments on the YouTube videos.
Love it.
Sometimes really long paragraphs that I don't feel prepared to read, like Rebecca was saying. I'm like,
Which is why I'm not on YouTube and I don't go in the comment section, but I totally get it.
thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Please like and subscribe. Please check out Rebecca,
Thanks.
White Woman Whisperer, on her Patreon. They're really
Yes.
great. I get the updates all the time, and I'm always like, stop what I'm doing and read and listen.
And there'll be so much exciting stuff to come now that, we're getting the tenants finished and we're working on our project. Our community versus groups conversation are think about how much we do here and just how far it's going to go. And they're just going to be a part of it too. And that's more community.
I even just from having the conversation about the topic of the chapter, I'm like, this is what white people do, right? We come in, we push everyone inside. I'm sure I've said this on the podcast before, but I always say that imperialism is just a history of white men going around and telling brown and black women to cover up their boobs. Because, like, you can't say anything to a woman when she has her tits out. Like, you can't control her. And
That's
it's
so
like,
good.
they'll
Yeah.
go into these insular groups and then now they want us to come diagnose and like fix the groups. And like maybe the problem is we just need to blow up all the groups and like go back
Yeah.
into the community.
For some reason, my brain went, go into the room and take your top off. And I don't know that was
No, but
kind of.
it's important. There's a reason. And in the book, I talk about underwear control. And there's
Uh-huh.
a reason that burning the bra is a thing. There's a reason that getting rid of your freaking boob coverings breaks patriarchy.
That's what I'm saying.
So,
Imagine there's a bunch of guys in masks stomping down the street and they feel so scary in their khakis and whatever. And then a bunch of girls just go,
all
they're masked up.
if we just walk down the streets with
What are
our
they going to do?
tops off, we would like break their march. That would,
Honestly, I would love to see them try not to, because that's all they really want to.
no,
I'm
they
just
would.
saying, white people.
As the resident military advisor, I can promise you that they would not be able to. We can't even not turn and stare when we're wearing fatigues. Like if we were just, oh my God, if we just had like an army of women that just responded when we were just in like fatigue bottoms and boots and nothing else. Like, all right,
I'm
people.
just saying they will make you feel like that's a bad, oh, don't sexualize yourself. Why, excuse me, because sometimes it's fine, but other times when you
That's
want to
the
be
new Green
serious.
Beret.
Someone tried this with me on one of my lives. They were like, "Oh, you're just exploiting your trauma." And I was like, "Yes, sir, I am.
And
That is what I'm doing. I took all of my trauma and sorted it out and turned it into products that help people, and now I am exploiting it." And he still kept trying to argue with me. He still kept being like, "Oh, but you're just exploiting." I was like, "Yes, I
uh-huh.
am. I
But
would
they
think
think
so."
they associate exploitation with inherent badness
Yeah.
now,
Um,
even though that's what capitalism is.
Well, and it's so funny because I guess like I'm so good these days at like not dressing myself for the male gaze, that every once in a while when I do, people are like the whole reason I'm wearing this leopard print dress and red earrings again is because people have been begging for the hot Captain Mestanek look, which is this without the Santa hat. And they're just like so taken aback. And I'm like, yeah, I could, just because I'm not dressing for the male gaze doesn't mean I can't turn on like the
Yeah,
sexiness, weaponize it when I want to. So all y'all that are listening, just stay tuned
I'm just
here
saying.
for tips for the rebellion because obviously like we're gonna have a good time. This is what
They
I've
won't
always
know
said
what to
too.
do.
Everyone's like, oh, they're gonna draft the women. Like, okay, do you know how much a battalion of women that didn't want to be in the military was like fucking
Let's
innovate?
ruin
Like,
it. Uh-huh.
my goodness, ruin it, but also just like completely change it and do it, in my opinion, better. Um, yeah, because we've
Yeah.
talked. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, listeners, for always being here for the journey of whatever these conversations are.
Yeah,
And
I get a lot of actually comments, not a lot of, but comments saying from people who say they binge these and they love them so much. So I get very excited. Now, I didn't want to say like I don't see anything, but it makes me I like what this has turned into. I think about sometimes I'm like, that's crazy. We were just talking. I remember being like, oh my God, we met. And we're doing something. So like don't underestimate yourself.
yeah,
Anybody.
that's so right. All right, till next time.